Selah. What it do, family? Y'all know what time it is. Uh-oh. Yo. What's up, vibes? Yes, family logic. It's gonna be myself. Y'all know what time it is. It's a vibes. Yes, family. What it do, family? You know how we do. It survives. Yes, family. What you do? What I do is your host Selah, Shalom, chiming in on the ones and twos. What I wanted to do was I wanted to redo the video I did based off the cosmogony and prophecy, or the cosmological order of creation, the creator. Because when I did that video, my mic wasn't on, so the mic was picking up through the laptop, and it was very muddy. You could barely hear. Although some people made it out, but I wasn't satisfied with it, you know what I mean? So I want to rehash that right there. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be going into the cosmological order of creation, coming from the standpoint of the Oahspe Bible. See if the Oahspe Bible lines up with actual creation through Creator. So we have to soon get this thing started, yeah? But until then, make sure to get your bitters.
Bitter Sweet Herbals, where the taste is bitter, but the results are sweet. bittersweetherbals.com.
Run the rhythm.
Bitter Sweet Herbals, where the taste is bitter, but the results are sweet. bittersweetherbals.com.
Make sure to get your bitters, you dig? But yeah, so we're going to be touching on, like I say, I'm reading it on the cosmological order of creation. Mic wasn't on, so this time mic is on. Mic check one. For matter of fact, let me make sure this time. Give me your one in the chat if you're hearing me loud and clear. One in the chat. All I need to see is 1-1 and I'm goody to go. Now for be goody to go. Peace, look. Lucy, what's good? I see you, King. Brazil, child of the Most High, Messiah. Child of the Creator of all, Messiah. Lion of Yah, Messiah. Set apart, Ima, I see you. I see the family chiming in. You dig? Alright, that's what I needed to see. So like I said, this video was basically touching on the cosmological order of creation. This was actually the presentation that I put together when I was supposed to have the debate with Naphtali. So I just presented the information instead. So we're gonna rehash that. My mic was off. So we're about to get into that in a minute. You know how we do. Just give a little bit more time to people to acknowledge I'm in the building. Spread the word. We're going to go into the order of creation coming from what the Oahspe Bible renders up. Very informative. Y'all seen the video before, but I'm just rehashing it. Very informative. I use pictures and illustration to convey the message so you can be clear, because objective learning is the best learning. When you could objectively see it. That's the easiest way for children to learn and all that, objective learning. If I show you an object, a square is a square. You dig? Ain't no arguing that. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to rationalize on creation. We're going to show and prove creator through creation. Some people will say, well, who is the creator? Well, the creator is just that, the one who creates in creation. It's not a person, it's not a man, it's not a woman. It's the ever-present, everywhere present. And the only way to understand that is through creation. So really the creator is unnameable, but we give it a name to identify it. So we could have comprehension of something that is incomprehensible. You dig? So we're going to go ahead and get into the lesson. Let me go ahead and share my screen. This is the lesson we're going to do. We're rehashing this out. It's called the science of creation in the Oahspe Bible, the cosmological science, archaeological, and prophecy of the creator. But I just cut it short to the cosmological science of the creator through creation. Something like that. So let's move forward. So let's start off with the universal principle of creation. This is what a lot of people lose sight of when dealing with creation. Oahspe Bible, Book of Cosmology and Prophecy, chapter 1, verse 1, it states, the same principles apply to all the stars, suns, planets, and moons, but differing in manifestation on account of size, motion, density, and relative place. So right here, this verse is initially letting you know that there's one universal order and one universal principle to creation. That's what it's telling you right here. So when we see the sun and the moon as globular objects or global objects, is following this one same consistent principle. That's why the moon appears to be solid, right? Solid rock. And the sun appears to be a gaseous form. But although it's two different minerals or two different bodies, one is solid and one a gas, they still form a globe. And that's due to this principle that they're talking about here. The same principles apply to all stars, sun, planets, and moon. So if the sun and the moon is globular, that'll apply to the stars and the planets as well. So let's move forward. In creation, these are the ingredients to creation. Because everything in creation is based off of minerals, elements, seen and unseen. Seen is the solids and the liquids. The unseen would be classified as the gas. Ruach in Hebrew is spirit, which means breath, means air, which means gas. So this is what we're dealing with. The periodic table of elements, which is the physical manifestation, which is the physical elements of everything in creation. So now, let's go to Oahspe, Book of Jehovah, chapter 6, verse 5. Pay attention. Observe, O man, as a farmer sows corn in one place, wheat in another, and flax in yet another, everything in a separate place. Here's a picture to convey the message. But look what it states here. Even so does Creator Jehovah store the ingredients of which worlds are made, everything in its place. The substance of iron in one place, the substance of stone in another, the substance of vegetable kingdom in another, and likewise for the substance of the animal kingdom, and the oils and sand. For he has places in the firmament of heaven for all of them. That which thou see are the Jaya, the Aja, and the nebula, and amidst them in places there is Simu also. So what this verse is basically saying, just as a gardener, a farmer, gardens and separates his crop, likewise do the Creator separates his crops or ingredients to creation in the atmosphere. You have the substance of iron over here, the substance of this over here, and the substance of that over here. So what the book is conveying and it's letting you know is that The substance of creation are orderly in the atmosphere in separate parts. Here's a precept. Here is found iron, copper, granite, water, lead, clay, nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen, and various other kinds of corporeal substances, as known on earth, and besides these, millions of things not known on the earth. And ether holds them in solution, even in the same way that the air holds the substance of clouds, which is water, in solution. Context. And as some clouds are so rarefied as to be imperishable, while others are opaque and even black, so are the comparative conditions of atmosphere. So they're giving you a reference in our capsulated world, what it's like in the higher realms outside of our capsulated world. Book of Cosmology and Prophecy, chapter 2, verse 1. There are two known things in the universe: ether, which is gas, and corpor, which is solids and liquids. What is ether? Book of Oahspe Bible, Book of Jehovah, chapter 2, verse 5. For the substance of my etherian worlds I created eth, the most rarefied. Out of eth I made them, and I made eth the substance of all created things, and gave it power and place not only by itself, but also power to penetrate and exist within all things, even within corporeal worlds. And to eth I gave dominion over both atmosphere and corpor. So what is eth? I created eth, the most rarefied. Eth is high altitude air. It's air that is existent. It's air that exists above the atmosphere of a planet. So when we look at the layers of the atmosphere, for an example, just an example, layers of atmosphere, right? Here's an example of what ether would be in real time. So like this picture right here, this is the atmosphere. And the last atmospheric level is called the exosphere. Now the ether would exist beyond the exosphere. That's how they classify ether, beyond the Earth's atmosphere. Because the Earth's atmosphere is ingrided to the Earth. It's bound to the Earth due to the vortex. So when it talks about the ether, it says, I created the ether, the most rarefied. It's highly altitude air at a high altitude. How does creation start? Now we're going to get to the nitty-gritty of creator. Because most people believe in the Big Bang Theory or argue creation from the Big Bang Theory, but that's exactly what it is, a theory. Because creation doesn't start with the bang, it starts with the vortex. So now let's start. Book of Jehovah, chapter 1, verse 1. All was, all is, all shall be. The all spoke in motion was and is and ever shall be. And being positive was called he and him. The all motion was a speech. So this picture that you see in the background is just an example of the all in all, meaning everything that encompasses creation. That is creator, the all in all. He's not a man. He's not a woman. He's not somebody sitting on the throne. He's not the God of Israel. The all in all is incomprehensible. Just like this picture you're looking at is incomprehensible. There's no beginning and ending to this, but we just get an idea and a glimpse of the all in all through this picture. So when the all in all, being the creator, starts to create, motion is the first cause of creation. So when it states, how does creation start? Through motion. Now, let's go into motion. How does motion flow? Now we're going to get into creation. How does motion flow? Book of Jehovah, chapter 3, verse 4. By the power of rotation, swift driving at the periphery, I condense the atmosphere worlds that float in the firmament, and these become my corporeal worlds. So there you have it. It states by the power of rotation. These are examples of the power of rotation. As above, so below, as above. And if you notice, you have a hurricane on one side and you have a galaxy on the other side, and they're both following this one consistent order of rotated motion. And like I read before at the beginning, All principal things follow this one rule, this one rule of creation. And this is objective knowledge I'm showing you. There's no arguing this. It's undisputed, and the Oahspe is backing how creation is ran. So again, by the power of rotation is how it starts. So from this, a state of no motion, a state of abstract, into a state of concrete. This is concrete. Now it's in motion. And if you notice, pay attention to the outskirts of the vortices. It is from these outskirts that the vortex is generated and is precipitated to the center. See, from external to internal is how the vortex works. So withdrawing the substance, the air, from one right here, drawing it in, and it's drawing the air or the gases and the minerals from here, drawing it in. So it's being drawn in two departments. So now here's another example. Book of Jehovah, chapter 1, verse 1, it states, the all spoke and motion was. The all spoke and motion was. So I'm showing you the 2 points where motion is being generated from this portion of the vortex and this portion of the vortex. Both of these bodies are simultaneously pushing air, gases to the center of the vortex. And when this air is precipitated to the center of the vortex, light is generated. See that? So I'm giving you an objective example because there's no disputing objective examples such as this. It's demonstrating creator. And who creates these vortices? Who makes these vortices? Created. We just say creator because it's the creator who creates. And this creation that is being created can't no man do. Can't no man do this right here. Can't no man generate no hurricane. Can't no man generate no galaxy. Only creator do that. The source. So now, the earth is in the midst of a vortex because you have the earth and you have the atmosphere that surrounds the earth. And the proof of that, it states here, in the midst of the vortices, I made them. And by the power of the vortices, I turned them on their axis. And I carry them in the orbits I alluded to them. Wider than to the moon of a planet, I have created the vortices, and they carry the moons also. So they're letting you know that the earth is subjected to a vortex, which scientists call the magnetic field. The Earth's magnetic field is the vortex. So here we're showing you how a vortex is generated. And then when all the minerals are precipitated to the center, the celestial body is produced. And the stages for the celestial body to be produced. Book of Jehovah, chapter 3, verse 2-4 states, man look upward in prayer, desiring to know the way of what? All created things, both on earth and in heaven. So the question is being raised. He want to know the manner of all created things. So how things are created? Let's get the answer. What Judge I say? The whirlwind I made as a sign to man of the way of my created world. So now we have context. We have an example in nature. We have an objective example in nature where the creator is said, this is a sign to you, man. I'm going to give you a sign through nature of how I create worlds. And these are called whirlwinds. And what does it state right here? The whirlwind I made as a sign to man of the manner of my created worlds. So here you see the whirlwind in the ocean. This is the vortex. This is the exact same thing you see up here, right here, the galaxy. These are how worlds are created through vortices. And we see example of these vortices on our very planet under the term as hurricanes, cyclones, and tornadoes. As you see the power of the whirlwind gathering up dust of the earth and driving it together. Here's an example of that. This is a tornado. This is a hurricane. The hurricane, looking at the hurricane from the top is the equivalent of looking at the hurricane, looking at the tornado. So looking at a tornado from the top would look like this. Looking at a tornado from the side is a tornado. Hurricane looks just like this too, just a bigger circumference. Now, that and likewise, I bring the Jaya, the Aja, and the nebula in the firmament of heaven. By the power of the whirlwind, I created the corporeal what? Sun, moon, and stars. See that? By the power of the whirlwind is how suns, moons, and stars are created. Here's an example of the vortex. Here's the solar system. Here, this is the galaxy. This is the exact same. This galaxy is the exact same thing as this. So even within this galaxy, you have many centralized solar systems within this one vortice. You have vortices within vortices within vortices. So our solar system could fit right here in its greater vortice. But if you notice, it's the same principal things. A central sun with celestial bodies going around it, and the lines of the vortex are the vortex. So again, a state of what? And I commanded man to name the whirlwind and the firmament, and the Etherian firmament, and he named them according to their shape, calling them what? Vortices and works, based off their shape. When the man looked up, see, created, these are vortices. See that? Based off their shapes and works. See, man ain't just make this shit up. He's naming these things based off what he observes in nature. Now, Book of Jehovah, chapter 3, verse 6. For each and every corporeal world I created a vortex first, and by its rotation, and from the places in the firmament where it traveled, I caused a vortex to conceive the corporeal world. So here we have, right here, that for each and every corporeal world, I created a vortex first. Now, if you notice in the Big Bang Theory, they don't talk about no vortices. They just talk about destructive explosion just coming into existence, which makes no sense. Because for anything to explode, it have to be something built up for it to explode. So that don't even make sense, the Big Bang Theory. What I'm giving you makes sense because I'm showing you proof of what we're talking about. You can't show me proof of a Big Bang Theory, but we can show you proof of the vortex, which is the first cause of creation. Now, again, it states, for each and every corporeal world, I created a vortex first. Now, if you pay attention to these pictures, look at the vortices. The vortices have to be produced first in order to produce the central sun that you see in the center of these pictures. Each one of these vortices got a central sun in the center. And numerous proofs. We're showing you proof. See that? See the central sun here? See the central sun here? All these are different galaxies in the cosmos following this one universal principle order from the Creator. Is the vortex. See that? For each and every corporeal world, I created a vortex first. And by its rotation, the rotation of the vortex, and from the place in the firmament where it travels, because these things is traveling, they're in motion. These vortices you see, they're not standing still. They're not just standing in one place whirling. They're whirling and moving at the same time. The same way this hurricane you see right here, you see this hurricane? This hurricane just ain't sitting there. It's moving as it rotates. Same rules apply with the galaxies in the Etherian, in the atmosphere. These galaxies are in motion. They're just not standing still. So again, for each and every corporeal world, I created a vortex first, and by its rotation and from the place in the firmament where it traveled, I caused the vortex to conceive the corporeal world. So the conception of the worlds are done in the center of the vortex. And this totally annihilates the flat earth theory because the flat earth theory don't support this. But I'm showing you a universal principle and rule of creation that you could see. So anybody in denial of this is just in their own state of ignorance. Now, the unseen becoming seen, because in creation there are three known things: solid, liquid, and gas. Liquid and solid are seen, but gas is unseen. So we're going to talk about the unseen becoming seen, because when you look at these vortices, these gases are unseen before becoming condensed enough for you to see it as a cloud or a dust. And then from there, it condenses more into the center of the vortex, producing celestial bodies. The first celestial body being produced is always a ball of fire. We're going to get into that. Book of Jehovah chapter 4, verse 2 and 6 states, the clouds in the air I bring into view suddenly by different currents of wind. I make the unseen visible and tangible to man's senses. In the same way, I cause the Etherian currents to bring forth Jaya, Aja, and Nebula prior to making corporeal worlds, which states here that the unseen is responsible for creating the seen. And if you look closely, like I said, when you look at the outside of these vortices, see that? The generation of the vortex is unseen before condensing and becoming seen into clouds and dust, and then more condensed in the harder particles. So now, verse 6. Things that man sees, I create with the beginning and end, but the unseen I made of endless duration. So what we see here is galaxies. These galaxies have beginning and endings because they're generated. And there's a time that that vortex will basically dissipate and go out of existence. No different than a hurricane. These hurricanes don't last forever. They're generated, they run their course, and then they dissipate. Same rules apply with our solar system and our planets. Now we're going to talk about the great serpent, which equals the solar system. In the Oahspe, it describes the solar system as the great serpent. Now you have the term serpent in the Bible, but in the Oahspe, the decoding of the serpent is referring to the solar system. And the reason they call the solar system the great serpent is based off its motion and its orbit. So now, Book of Cosmology and Prophecy, chapter 1, verse 33, it states, the Earth vortex is a subvortex. See that? So it says the Earth vortex is a subvortex existed within the Sun's vortex. Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, and so on, are corporeal worlds, and each and all of them are within vortices. See that? So the same way that you see these lines going around the sun, each planet got vortices around them also, vortices within vortices, being subvortices also. And the combination of all these subvortices within and including the sun's vortex is known by the name Great Serpent or Solar Felix, for which reason the sun's vortex was called the Master. See that? Jehovah said, the sun I made as the head of a serpent. See that? See, like the sun like the head, while the planets play as the body. Look what it's stating. The sun I made as the head of a serpent, and his phalanx I made as the body of a serpent. Thus I made the great corporeal serpent, referring to the solar system. Book of Safat, chapter 1, verse 58, Jehovah said, the sun I made as the head of a serpent, and his phalanx I made as the body of the serpent. Thus I made the great corporeal serpent. Book of Jehovah, chapter 3, verse 7, to make the sun I created a great vortex, and within this vortex and subject to it I made the vortices of many of the corporeal worlds. The sun's vortex I caused to rotate, and I give it power to carry other vortices within it. So right here it states, to make the sun I created a great vortex. Now when we come up here, back up here again, these rings are the vortex. These rings are responsible for producing the sun. And these same rings exist around each one of these celestial bodies, but they don't have it on here. So the vortex is responsible for producing the sun. No vortex, no sun, no planets. It says their density and position, they are thus carried forth around the sun. Here's another example. Central sun, whirling vortices and whirling planets subjected to that central sun. What is the helical model of the solar system? This is how they describe the helical, how we pronounce that shit, model, right? But it's the same thing as what you see up here. The sun is protruding first and the planets are tailing along like a sperm cell, like a serpent. See that? And this is and this even follows the same rules of a vortex, because you see the sun still being the center and you see the planets rolling around the sun. No different than what you see here. And this is a video where it says the helical model, our solar system, is a vortex. And you can look that video up. See, the helical model, our solar system, is a vortex. Because I remember Neftali tried to use it to say that the planet, our solar system, is not a vortex. But hey, you have a video in rebuttal to her own argument. But that was for debate purposes at the time. So now, the orbit of the solar system. Synopsis of 16 cycles, chapter 1, verse 1 and 2, it states, first, the earth travels in a circuit around the sun, which is divided into 4 arcs called spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And we're familiar with that. The earth travels around the sun, but the sun is not stationary. The sun is in an orbit as well. And here's the proof. Verse 2. Second, the sun with his family travels in a large circuit which is divided into 1,500 arcs, the distance for each arc being about 3,000 years or one cycle. So this is the orbit of the solar system. So here's the sun, for example, and each one of these lines is 3,000 years as it orbits around the solar system. So the same way the Earth got only 4 arcs, this one got 1,500. 1,500 seasons. Imagine that. So now, here's a precept. In the case, this is in the book of Cosmology and Prophecy, chapter 3, verse 23. In the case of double stars, triples, and so on, in conjoin the center of the shared vortex, the so-called center of gravitation, is not to each one, but to the intervening center between them. The polarity of such a group is as to the vortex. Do not think, however, that double stars, triples, and quadruples are the limit of combinations in one vortex. There are clusters of planets, hundreds of them, thousands and even millions that sometimes occupy one vortex. See that? And here's an example of that. This is one vortex, and here is our solar system, which is a vortex itself within this grander vortex, the Milky Way vortex. So you have, just like we have our solar system here, you got the numerous other solar systems that are subjected to this one vortex, one universal rule. Now, the positive and negative force of creator. Now, here's where a lot of people got lost when they read and heard the terms he and him and he's male and female, they're thinking of a man. But the creator is talking about force. So again, coming back to the beginning, the book of Jehovah, chapter 1, verse 1, it states, the all spoken motion was and is and ever shall be. And being positive was called he and him. The all motion was his speech. So when it states the he and him in the Oahspe referring to Jehovah, it's referring to the positive force. And here's an example. All was equal past, all is equal present, all shall ever be equal future. Past, present, future, and that's the vortex. That's things going cycles of past, present, future. Everything going circles. The all spoke and motion was past, motion is present, and motion shall ever be future. So motion is past, present, future, which is a circle, a vortex. Everything flows in circles. Motion, okay, being positive was called he and him. The all motion was a speech. So here's an example of the vortex. The north and south is the feminine force of vortices, and the east and west is the masculine force of vortices. So right here it states, Oahspe Bible, Cosmology and Prophecy, chapter 1, verse 10, for which reason the north and south lines of the earth vortex is called the M vortexia, or the negative force, for it is the subject of the other. See, it's subjected. In order to have produced life, they have to be intermingled. Here's the positive force. The name of the force of vortex is called vortexia. That is what? Positive force, because it is arbitrary and exerts east and west. That's the flow of positive force, east and west, as in the case, context, as in the case of a whirl, as in the case of a wheel turning on its axis. Its force will be at right angles with its axis, at the extreme center of which will be no force. That's why we don't feel nothing on the earth. That's why we feel the earth don't move and shit like that, because there's no force at the center of the vortex. So this is the east and west motion of vortexia, the he and him, and this is the feminine, the her, the feminine, the masculine, the feminine. So we're not talking about a damn man or woman. We're talking about positive and negative vortexian current that is used to produce creation. Without these two forces, there is no life. Cosmology and Prophecy, chapter 1, verse 9 and 10, what I just read, the name of the force of the vortex is called vortexia, that is positive force, because it is arbitrary to exert east and west at right angles to the axis. As in the case of a whirl, as a wheel turning on its axis, its force will be at right angles with its axis, at the extreme center of which will be no force. Example, wheel turning on its axis. There's an example. At the center, there's no force here. The vortex going east and west, That's the flow of positive vortexia. For which reason, the north and south line of the Earth vortex is called the M vortexia, or negative force, for it is the subject of the other. As a whirlwind gathers up straw and dust, which drives it towards the center of the whirlwind and to its poles, so do corporeal substances incline to approach the poles of the Earth's vortex, which may be produced by poising as magnetized needles. So we're talking about positive and negative forces, energy, when we're talking about he and him, her, and the creator. It's not talking about a man. Now, the blowing of the breath of creator. Because some people thought that when Jehovah said he blew his breath, it was a man standing there blowing his breath. But sometimes we got to clear up the ignorance. Oahspe Bible, Book of Divinity, chapter 1, verse 8, Jehovah said, I blew my breath outward, and behold, all things are created. Here is an example of that. This is an example of the blowing of the breath. The blowing of the breath. The blowing of the breath is the generating of the vortex. So the vortex is generated here. The vortex is generated here. And in motion, it is precipitated to the center. This is the blowing of the breath. I blew my breath outward, and behold, all things are created. You cannot have creation without the generating of the vortex first. So this is the expression, the exertion of the vortex, which is the blowing out. This is the Big Bang, goddammit. Y'all want to talk about this is the Big Bang. This is the expression and the blowing out in order to create vortices and worlds. So they need to understand vortexian rule, because the vortex is the goddamn Big Bang. Without the vortex, you cannot even have a Big Bang. You can't even have creation. All creation starts with the blowing of the breath of the creator, which is the vortex. Book of Eighth, Son of Jehovah, chapter 2, verse 13. I have spoken, and my breath is a floating world. My speech is written in the lines where countless millions of suns and stars travel. Now look what it states. I have spoken, and my breath is a floating world. What is that? There's not a galaxy. Ain't these floating worlds? What did he say? I have spoken, and my breath is a floating. I have spoken. When the creator speaks, this is what happens. This is what generates when the creator decides to speak. He generates worlds by the blowing of the breath. He creates floating worlds. See that? Here's another example. I blow my breath outward, and behold, all things are created. Here's our solar system. Here's a galaxy. Same thing, same rules. In order for this galaxy to exist, the vortex has to be produced first. The vortex is older than the celestial bodies. Now here's the process of creating. Seasons and cycles equal prophecy. Here's the process of creation. Seasons and cycles equal prophecy. There are 4 ages to all celestial bodies: a time of creation, a time of inhabitation, a time of barrenness, and a time of dissipation. And then they repeat itself the same way the seasons repeat themselves, following the same rules. Keep in mind, seasons and cycles equal prophecy. What is prophecy? Forecasting things to come. So for an example, we're in the winter season. I could prophesize and say, within the next 2 months, the dry leaves will start to, the dead tree will start to produce leaves. The dead grass will start to produce greenery, and fruits will begin to sprout, and bees and caterpillars will start to come out. I'm prophesizing spring and summer. But being that I know the seasons and cycles, I can prophesize. So once you understand seasons and cycles, you could predict creator's creation. And I got 144,000 years because the Oahspe gives you some math to play with. So now, these 4 ages is in comparison to the 4 seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. That's equivalent to the time of creation, the time of barrenness, the time of inhabitation, the time of barrenness, and the time of dissipation. They coincide with the 4 seasons. Book of Ashang, Son of Jehovah, chapter 2, verse 6 states, "In the time from one dawn of Dan to another shall be called one Dani." A Dani equals 3,000 years. 4 Dana shall be called 1 square, because this is the sum of one density, which is 12,000 Earth years. 1 square equals 12,000 years. So Oahspe gives you math to play with. And 12 squares shall be called 1 cube, which is the first dividing of the third space in which there is no variation in the vortex of the earth. 1 cube is 144,000 years. 4 cubes shall be called one sum, because its magnitude embraces 1 equal of the great serpent. 1 sum equals 576,000 years. And all this has to do with the seasons and cycles, cosmological time periods. So here's an example of the orbit of the solar system and the sun traveling around the solar system. So again, it states 1 sum because it embraced 1 equal of the great serpent. This is 1 equal out of the 8 sums. Here go 8 sums, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And one of these makes 1 equal out of the 8. So the earth is traveling right now in the 7th magnitude. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. So the earth is traveling here. And 1 sum is 576,000 years. The book of Son of Jehovah, chapter 3, verse 3. And I examined the records of the red star of heaven and of the earth, and the accounts of Jehovah's harvest. And I perceived the bondage and labor of the red star, being the earth, were of the 7th magnitude in the advance of habitable worlds. So what they're saying right here, what I got highlighted, where it states 7th magnitude in the advanced habitable world, is referring to the 7th sum. So the solar system has went through the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and now we're in the 7th sum. We call it the 7th garden in the inhabitable age in this particular time period. So now the 7th magnitude equals 3,600,000 years from the 1st magnitude. Just doing a little math on that. So here go the 8 magnitudes without the earth, without the solar system in it, so you can get an example. So in each sum, the earth goes through a time of creation and habitation, barrenness and dissolution, and then it starts over again in each garden. So it's like this is a year. This is like 1 year. This is like spring, summer, fall, and winter make a year, and then it starts over again. Spring, summer, fall, and winter make the next year. So the same rules apply with the earth and its 4 ages: the time of creation, the time of inhabitation, the time of barrenness, and the time of dissolution, all take place within 1 age, within 1 sum, and then it starts over again in the next sum, and it continues on. So we're in the 7th sum right now. So this is the 7th time the earth has been inhabited with animal and human life since the 1st. 8 sums equal the orbit of 4,601,000 years. That's how many years it takes to orbit the solar system, to orbit. Just like how it takes, they say, roughly 364 days for the earth to orbit the sun. It takes 4 million some change for the sun to orbit the Milky Way galaxy. Book of Jehovah, chapter 4, verse 15 through 16. This is a breakdown of the 4 ages, what I was just showing you with the time of creation, time of habitation, and so forth. Verse 15. First, as vapor, the vortex carrieth forth, and as it condenses, its friction engenders heat, and it is molten, becoming as a globe of fire in heaven. That's what I was saying earlier. Every celestial body starts off as a globe of fire in heaven, whether it be the sun, the moon, the stars. All celestial body follow this one rule. The same way you started off as a sperm cell before becoming an adult who you are, like the same rules apply in creation. Every celestial body started out as a globe of fire in heaven, even the earth. And here's an example. See this globe of fire? This is an example. This is the first cause of creation. After the vortex is generated, and after the vortex precipitate mineral to the center of the vortex, and then at the center of the vortex, the celestial body is produced. That first production is a ball of fire. It says, first as vapor, which is the vortex, as you see here, the vortex carrieth forth, and it condenses. The condensing takes place towards the center. Its friction engenders heat, and it is molten, becoming what? As a globe of fire in heaven. So what is that telling you about our sun? What is that telling you about our sun? Our sun is in the first stages of creation. Although our planet is an inhabitable age, our sun is in the first age because it's a globe of fire in heaven. And it has the potential to become an inhabitable planet once it gets to the second age. So check it. Book of Jehovah, this is a precept. Book of Jehovah, chapter 5, verse 14. As a testimony to man, behold, the earth was once a globe of liquid fire. See that? Nor was there any seed on it, But in due season I rain down Simu on the earth, and by virtue of my presence I quicken into life all the living. Without seed I created the life that is in them. See that? The highlight here is that the earth was once a globe of liquid fire. What did it state up here? What did it state up here? First as a vortex, first as vapor, the vortex is carried forth, and as it condenses, friction engenders heat, and it is what? Molten, becoming what? As a globe of fire in heaven. So this earth was once looking like the sun at one time in its early development of creation. So again, the earth was once a globe of liquid fire. Let's move forth to the next stage. Then it takes its place as a newly born world, and I set it in an orbit prepared for it. In the next age, I bring it into Simu, for it is ripe for the bringing forth of living creatures, and I bestow the vegetable and animal kingdom. Now, let's pause. If you notice, it went from a ball of liquid fire. It went from a ball of liquid fire. And then Jehovah said, I rain down Simu. And then he quickened to life the vegetable and animal kingdom. So when the fire cooled down, which was left was the mineral kingdom. And then from the mineral kingdom, he rained down a Simu, which produced vegetation and animal life. That was the next phase. So you have the first state, time of creation, the ball of liquid fire. And then the second stage is when it becomes cooled down, rained down to become an habitable planet. So again, it states here, then it takes its place as a newly born world and I set it in the orbit prepared for it. In the next age, I bring it into Simu, for it is right for the bringing forth of living creatures, and I bestow the vegetable and animal kingdom. And there you have it there. Now, this is the time period that we at right now, the inhabitable age of a planet. But look, it doesn't end there. Next, it enters Hutu, for it is past the age of begetting, even as the living who are in advance in years. Next, it enters Adu, and nothing can generate upon a planet. So it's going to come a time when the complete earth is going to look like this, like a desert, a barren wasteland. Right after the inhabitable age comes the age of barrenness. Because if we don't have vegetation to support animals will go extinct. Humans will go extinct. If humans don't have no vegetation, niggas will go extinct. So when the resources and the soil become exhausted and become barren like this, it's going to go into the third age, the age of barrenness. And here's an example of the Earth's 10 largest deserts, and it's to show you how much of the Earth is a barren land. See that? The Earth is almost in a barren state. Look at the greenery. We got a little bit of greenery over here in South Carolina. Look at North America. The whole West is a desert. It's only a matter of time before this whole shit. Look at Australia. Australia is damn near in this inhabitable age. I mean, it's in the age of barrenness. Because look at the greenery of Australia. It's on the outskirts. So you can't live in Australia in the desert without vegetation. You're gonna starve to death. No water, you're gonna dehydrate. So Australia is an example of planetary barrenness. It's only a small portion of greenery on this coast right here that you see that can sustain. Once that goes, they can't live on this. It's gone. Likewise with the rest of the continent. Once the whole continent looks like this, it's called the age of barrenness. And let's read that verse again. Next it enters Hutu, for it is past the age of begetting, even as the living who are advanced in years. Next it enters Adu, and nothing can generate upon the planet because nothing can generate on dead soil. So it's going to come a time when the vegetation is going to be exhausted of its resources and it's going to go barren. No different than when if you ever did gardening before and you use the same soil over and over again, you realize that all the minerals has been exhausted and you got to get new soil. Then after that age, what it states, then cometh Uz, and it is spirited away into the unseen realm. Thus I create and dissipate planets, sun, moon, and stars. So right there, the Oahspe just gave you a rundown of how the celestial body goes through these 4 ages: a time of creation, a time of inhabitation, a time of barrenness, and a time of dissipation. And if you notice, the time of dissipation is when the celestial body turns back into a dust cloud. It turns into a dust cloud, a cosmic dust cloud. And then from that same cosmic dust cloud, the vortex precipitates itself and another world is created out of the very same minerals that it was used out of the very same substance that was dissipated. Here's a precept to that. Oahspe Bible, Book of Jehovah, chapter 4-6. Things that man see I create with the beginning and an end, but the unseen I made of endless duration. Cosmic dust are dissipated planets. This is cosmic dust. It's a dissipated planet. Let's see examples of this in the cosmos. So cosmic dust are dissipated planets, and the same cosmic dust are reused to create planets. So here's an example of cosmic dust. First, as vapor, the vortex carried forth. So once a planet is dissipated, this is a dissipated planet, for example, cosmic dust. The vapor, the creator then generates this into a vortex, a circle, using the same minerals, the same everything that was just dissipated to create all over again. See that? Vortex equal vapor equal dissipated planets equal cosmic dust. Cycles of the 4 ages: time of creation, time of inhabitation, time of bearingness, time of dissolution. And from this dissolution, the vortex is generated again, and it goes back to these 4 ages. And that's the cycle of how these 8 gardens, these 8 suns play out. So we're in the 7th sum. So the earth has been created and dissipated 6 times over, and we're in the 7th inhabitable age. And that also means that humans has been created, inhabited, and extinct 6 times, and we're the 7th stock. That's no different than saying we're the 7th fruit tree. You know, the fruit trees of last year is not the same fruit trees of this year. So each year you got new fruits growing on a tree. So we're the 7th year of the fruit tree. Just putting that shit in layman terms so you can understand. The orbit and arc cycles. Book of Jehovah, chapter 7, verse 2, it states, and Jehovah called the earth and the family of the sun to travel in an orbit, the circuit of which requires of them 4,700,000 years. And he placed in the lines of the orbit at distances of 3,000 years Etherian lights. Here's another example of the orbit of the solar system. So here you have the sun, and they're going through these arc cycles of 3,000 year cycles as it orbits the Milky Way galaxy. 4 ages of a celestial body. The inhabitable age. So the most important part of the 4 ages, of course, is the time of inhabitation, because that's the time that the earth is suitable to support vegetation and animal life. We're part of the animal kingdom as humans. So the inhabitable age of a planet is 144,000 years equal inhabitable age. Now, 144,000 years is divided into 2 halves of 72,000 years. In 144,000 years, 24 arc cycles. Here's an example. So you got the first half, you got the second half. And this is 144,000 years. And that's the inhabitable age of the earth, meaning to say that's how long from the creation of man to his inhabitation to his extinction is 144,000 years, based off what it's saying here. Now, we're going to go into what? The first creation and the second creation in the age. But before we go there, give me a 1 in the chat if you're getting this understanding. And let me take a break. Let me get a drink for a minute. You know what I mean? You know how we do, fam. Give me a 1 in the chat if you get this understanding. Let me get a drink real quick. It's the vibes. I think I split, yeah? So far, we've shown you the essence of the Creator's creation. I'm giving you examples, diagrams, illustrations, graphs to show you how the Creator's creation works in real time. Yeah. And everything I'm showing you can be identified. The 4 seasons, the 4 ages, the vortices. I'm showing you pictures and illustrations. See that? Everything I'm showing, everything I'm reading, I'm proving as we go along. Yes, family. I see the ones coming in. It's a vibes. That's right, it's vibes, son. You know how we do, King. It's a blood clot vibes. Yes, family. All right, let's get back into the lesson. We're back in class now. That was a little 15-minute break. Let's get back in class now. All right, where we at? All right, this is where we at with it. The first creation and second creation in the age of Simu. The age of Simu is the time of creation. The first age was 144,000 years. So now we're about to get down to the nitty gritty. Book of Knowledge, Oahspe Bible, Book of Knowledge, chapter 4, verse 17, it states, by Jehovah in mastery over his person created he countless worlds, of which the corporeal earth is one. And he created the living thereon. And the time was one Gadol, 24,000 years. So it's letting you know that within the time of creation, he created the living, which is animal and man, or animal. Humans are part of the animal kingdom. So I'm going to say the animal kingdom within 24,000 years. So now, here's an example. Let's get to the nitty. This is the Simone age. This is the first age. These are the 4 ages right here. Time of creation, right? Time of inhabitation, time of bearingness, time of dissolution. Each age is 144,000 years before it moves on to the next age. So just like the 4 seasons. Spring is 3 months, summer is 3 months, fall is 3 months, and winter is 3 months. So these 3 months is equivalent to these 144,000 years, putting them in layman terms. And when you add up the 144 years times 4 is going to give you that 576,000 years, which is one sum. So now here's the first. This right here, what we're looking at is this age right here, the time of creation, 144,000 years. So here's the 144,000 years broken down into 2 halves of 72,000 years. And here you have the Gadol degrees of 24,000 years that it was just mentioned up here. He said what? He created the earth in one Gadol, 24,000 years. 3 24,000 years make up 72,000 years. 3 24,000 years make up a half age, 72,000 years. 6 24,000 years gives you 144,000. So 24,000 times 6 is going to give you 144,000. 24,000 times 3 is going to give you 72,000 years, a half age. So now coming back to what the verse stated, right? The book of knowledge. By Jehovah in mastery over his person created he countless worlds, of which the corporeal earth is one. And he created the living thereon, and the time was one Gadol, 24,000 years. So these are the 24,000 years within the time period. And these Gadols got degrees we're going to get into later or in a minute. So we're going to go into the first creation on the earth. The first creation on the earth. This is why the serpent is so much, the serpent is a reptile. So it falls in the reptile category. So reptiles were here first. And if you notice in the Garden of Eden, when you look at the story of the Garden of Eden, if you notice, the serpent came out of nowhere. God put Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. He put Adam right, then he created Adam from the rib, and then out of nowhere comes a serpent. So the Oahspe lets us know that the first creation on earth was the serpent or the reptile. And we're not talking about a walking, talking person. We're talking about the animal kingdom, literally. Just as you see in this picture. Now, here's the Book of Inspiration, chapter 6, verse 8 through 5. It states, verse 8. I made the serpent, right here, the lowest of all living creatures, for I gave him an element capable of destroying himself. When the earth was encircled with poisonous gases I created poisonous vines and weeds, trees, and all kinds of herbs growing profusely upon the earth. In that way, I created the vegetable world from destroying gases and from the earth substance. And in that day, all growing things upon the earth which I had created was poisonous as to animal life. So I'm showing you again that if the vegetation ain't right, you can't be sustained on the planet. So the creators let us know that one time on the planet, before vegetables were suitable to digest, before there was alkaloids, they were poisonous. Anything that is poisonous has a high concentration of acid. So the soil must have been highly acidic, producing these poisonous weeds in the first place before the pH reached a level to be suitable to animals. See that? So again, it states, all growing things upon the earth which I had created were poisonous as to animal life. So even the animals couldn't even eat the vegetation in that day, in the early stages of the planet. Then look what it states here. Then I created the serpents of all sizes. I created them, and they were poisonous also. The snake is very poisonous, some of them. But the poison of a snake will kill your ass in minutes if you don't get treatment, or if your immune system is weak as hell. But look what it states. Then I created the serpents. Now, look what it states here, verse 12. And the serpents I created were carnivorous, feeding upon one another. Self-impregnating, I created them. Self-impregnating. Now check out this. Here's a reference. Let's go to this reference. What did this reference say? Anna, the anaconda, got pregnant all by herself, by virgin birth. So here they have an article about an anaconda that self-impregnated, got pregnant without no other snake. You can read the article whenever you get a chance. It's called Anna, the anaconda got pregnant all by herself. That's a reference coinciding with what it states here in the Oahspe, where it states that they were self-impregnating. I created them. And we have a reference in our today's time of a self-impregnated anaconda. So we got sources even today from a time period that was millenniums ago. And look what it states here. Thus I drove the poison of the air down into the vegetable kingdom, or down from the vegetable, and from there into the animal world. Look at that. Thus I purified the air of heaven. Now the air we see is like this. But remember, the poison was in the atmosphere. So the poisonous gases was looking like this before you what? Cleansed the atmosphere. So the poison, or the chemicals, the highly acidic gases, went from the atmosphere to what? The vegetable kingdom. We got up here from the air to the vegetables. You got poisonous vegetables. Vegetation, poisonous herbs, and then from the poisonous herbs into the animal kingdom. Look at that. So again, it states what? Thus I drove the poison of the air down into the vegetable, and from thence into the animal world. Thus I purified the air of heaven. Now we could breathe in and, we got clean air now. But at one time we couldn't suck in this air because it was poisonous. Because it's going through its development stages of making it inhabitable for humans. These are the precursors of an inhabitable world. This was the first creation I created on the earth, on this world. See that? So it's letting you know that the first animal created was the goddamn serpent, the reptile. The reptile exists on land and in water. He ain't say the elephant came first. He ain't say the fish. The nigga said the reptile, the snake, the serpent. That's interesting. Instead, what? This was the first creation I created on the earth. Now, what happened after this first creation? Look, the time of falling Aja, Jaya, and Nebula. So now, look what it states here. Verse 15. Then I overcast the earth with falling nebula and covered up the poisonous growing upon the earth, and they were turned to oil and coil. See that? Them oil beds you see in the earth, you thought that shit came from the earth? No, no, no. Nigga, that shit came and fell from the sky. You remember we read earlier that he had ingredients in the atmosphere, sand, oil, just like he got iron, copper, all those is in the atmosphere existing, and they could rain down when the density is strong enough. So again, it states what? Then I overcast the earth with falling nebula, covered up the poison growing upon the earth, and they were turned to oil and coil. So these falling nebula that you see here became oil and coil. Now here's a precept to that. Oahspe Bible, Book of Cosmology and Prophecy, chapter 8, 3 through 15. There is still another period to all corporeal worlds, Lutz. In the time of Lutz, there falls on the planet condensed earthly substance such as clay, stone, ashes, disseminated molten metals, and so on, in such great quantity that it can be compared to snowstorms, piling up corporeal substances on the earth in places to a depth of many feet and in drifts up to 100 feet. See that? So these fallen nebulas, these fallen meteorites could bury some shit up to 100 feet and even more, I'm sure. And these are just objective examples of these things coming from the atmosphere into the earth. Look what it states here. Lutz was called Uz by some ancient prophets because it was a time of destruction. If Lutz followed soon after a Simu period, when portion of the earth was covered with Simu and rank vegetation, it charred them, penetrating and covered them up. Most of the coil beds and oil beds in the earth were made this way. Look at that. They letting you know that what you see here, the coil beds in the earth, it came from falling nebula. We thinking this shit coming from the earth, from the core of the earth, not knowing this shit came from the atmosphere of the earth. Lodged itself and buried itself hundreds of feet below the earth. And that shit's still cooking up. It said Lutz belonged to an early age of a planet when its vortex is more extended and when the nebula clouds in its outer belt are subject to what? Condensation, so as to rain down on earth these corporeal showers. See that? See that? So they let you know that the oil beds, these oil beds that produce, well, you know what I mean? Where we extract these gases and oils and coil, this shit came from the atmosphere. It came from what Oahspe calls Ajah, Jaya, and Nebula. Right here, the time of falling Ajah, Jaya, and Nebula, basically them there meteorites and other things that come with it. So now, Oahspe Bible Plate 34. And it came to pass when the earth was in the midst of Taza, there fell upon the earth for a space equal of 12 days, condensed nebula in dust and stone and water, combined sufficient in some places to cover up forests Jehovah had made. And that which fell was hot like molten iron, and the trees and the forests of the valley were beaten down and covered up and burnt to blackness. You hear this? Jehovah said, and these shall remain on the earth, for in the time that follows, man shall seek the coil, not knowing whence it came, and it will bear witness of the regions of Ajah, Jaya in the firmament of heaven. See that? We thinking this shit coming from below, not knowing this shit fell from the sky and was covered up and buried. So now when we striking, oh Lord, we done struck oil, nigga. We done struck some shit that came from the atmosphere. That been sitting alive in there since the earliest ages, the earliest ages of the earth. Because like I said, these things took place in the earlier ages of the planet. It was more frequent. Because you see, it said in a span of 12 days, these things happen. See right here. For a space equal to 12 days. Can you imagine 12 days of straight falling nebula like this? 12 straight days? You know how much beating up the land that is? It says, man shall seek the coil not knowing whence it came, and it will bear witness of the regions of Ajah and Jaya and Nebula in the firmament. Look at that. Ain't no other book revealing shit like this. All the studies niggas doing on oil is coming from the standpoint of the earth, not knowing that this shit descended down. Now we're going to go into the second creation. The first creation was the serpent. And then he dropped those nebula beds for the coming creation. So look what it states. This is the second creation. Book of Inspiration, chapter 6, verse 16 and 17, it states, Then I made a new creation, the second creation, giving feet, legs, and bones to the animals I designed for the earth. Verse 17, And when the earth was ripe for man, then I created him. Male and female, I created those of the second creation. Look at that. Look at that. Man is of the second creation. And then he said, when the earth was ripe for man, the earth had to be ripe, because you remember we read earlier that vegetation was poisonous as to animal life at that particular time. So the earth and the vegetation, the pH would have to be suitable for man to digest. So that have to be right before man could even be created. So it says when the earth was ripe for man, the ripening of the earth is when the pH of the soil was at an alkaloid, man could digest the fruits, the vegetation, so now man could be created. The earth is now ripe for man. Here's an example of the first and second creation. So now keep in mind, this is the time of creation, the first age. Remember I told you about the 4 ages. This is the first age, the time of creation. So creation takes place in the time of creation. So animal and man would have took place in the time of creation. So the Simu age, half of this, the half age is 72,000 years. So we in the second half of the 72,000 years, and we're in the sixth Gadol, the sixth 24,000 years out of the whole. And this is a breakdown for 12,024. Because you remember it stated that he created the living on the planet in 24,000 years, one Gadol. One Gadol is 24,000 years, which would have been the sixth Gadol within the time of creation. And this Gadol is broken down into two halves, 12,000 years. So the first 12,000 years was the first creation, which was the serpent. You got the jellyfish, right? And then he rained down Simu, what we just read. He rained that down. And the next 12,000 years, he created the second creation, which was land animals, and last off, man and female, male and female. So all this took place within one Gadol, a period of 24,000 years, broken down into 12 halves of 12,000 years. In these 12,000 years, you get the first creation in the first 12,000 years, and you get the second creation in the second half of the 12,000 years. Now here's a precept. It states, Book of Jehovah, chapter 6, verse 11, Out of Simu I made man, and man was only like a tree, but dwelling in darkness, and I called him Asu. Book of Selah, Asu, a man in aboriginal state, before he used words, before he congregated, a very young child, one who knows no word of expression. See, this is the ignorant state that man was in prior to having comprehension. The race of man in what is first age, as applied to corporate earth, Asu, the first inhabited age. So here's an example of the growth of mortals through the cycles. The growth of mortals through the arc cycle. So when man was first created, he came into the world just like a baby comes into the world, dumb and stupid. What does dumb and stupid mean? It means lack of intelligence. Let's pull that up real quick. Let's pull that up. What does dumb mean? What does dumb mean? See, what does dumb mean? Temporarily unable or willing to speak. What does dumb literally mean? Mute, speechless. See that? Speechless. If you don't have a language, if you're not taught, unwilling to speak, unable or unwilling, a child is unable because he has to be taught how to speak. What is stupid? What does stupid mean? A great lack of intelligence or common sense. Children lack intelligence and common sense as a baby because they have to develop these things. So the word dumb and stupid is just a lack thereof. But as you grow, you become intelligent. You learn objectively, and then you get it within. So this is the same way a child grows. The whole human race grows in the same manner. At one time, man was walking on his belly, not knowing who he was. He had to been taught. He had to learn how to walk upright and all that. So this is just like an example of the growth of the mortal race through the arc cycles. The condition of man in the beginning. Book of Inspiration, chapter 6, verse 18 through 23, it states, and man was dumb. What did we just read what dumb was? Without speech, like any animal, without speech. They go to the definition right there in the book. When a baby comes into the world, it's what? Without speech. It has to be taught A, B, C, D, E, F, G. A baby comes into the world, oh, gaga, goo, goo, gaga, without speech. And man came into the world in the same manner. And man was dumb like other animals, without speech and without understanding, even less than any other creature that I created. Verse 19. Nevertheless, I had given to man, and thus made him out of all the dissolved elements of every living thing that had preceded him. Elements are minerals. And man partook of the first and second creation. After the manner of every animal on the earth, I created man. See that? Man is the aspect of every animal. You have a little bit of everything. The gene, do the genes, you could find that. You could find that. Man has a little bit of everything. He states, what? Every animal on the earth, I created man. Of every animal of the earth, I created man. With all the characteristics of all of them. I created him, male and female. I created them. So man is the highest form of animal on the planet because we are the only animal on this planet that has an intelligence to comprehend outside of just nature and outside of the animal world. And man was unconscious of his creation. The same way when a baby comes into the world, he's unconscious of who he is. He has to be taught his culture. He has to be raised up in the culture to know it. So again, a man was unconscious of his creation, not knowing where he came from, nor did he know which was his own species. See that? It's showing you how low, just like a baby. A baby don't know his own species or none of that coming into the world. It's showing you that man had these same conditions coming into the world. And I sent my angels to man to teach him who he was and to rouse him up to his capabilities for which I created him. So the angels came as parents. Just like your child, you bring your child into the world, you are the parent and you are responsible for what? Showing him his capabilities, showing him who he is, raising him up. So the angels were sent to raise up the first race of man. Verse 23, and my angels drew from man's side substance, and thus took on corporeal forms. And the angels dwelt with man as helpmates to make man understand. See that? See that? The parents of the first race of man were the angels. They came to lift them up, to teach them, clothe themselves. Let me show you how to walk upright. Because man was mimicking the animals. He ain't had no example to walk upright. What is Simu? Let's get into that. It's the Simuan age. Book of Cosmology and Prophecy, verse 5, chapter 5, verse 17, place the Simuan age at 99 degrees Fahrenheit scale, the time of quickening animal life. So remember, the creator said he created the living within one Gadol. The Gadol he created it was the sixth Gadol within the first age. And the Gadol degree would be 100 to 99, which would be what? Place the Simuan age at 99 degrees, the time of quickening animal life. So when the earth was ripe enough, which was 99 Gadol degrees, or the sixth Gadol, which is 99 degrees, planet temperature-wise, or vortexian temperature-wise of your body. Bam! Man was created. Right there. Boom! Creation of Asu, right there. Boom. So out of the 24,000 years in the last, so in the first age, the last 24,000 years in the first age, it is when Asu was created. And Asu was created, so 24,000 years divided into two was 12,000 years. He was created in the second half of the 12,000 year, in the last 6,000 years of the inhabitable age, of the time of creation, right here. So Asu was created 6,000 years before the Ark of One. So this is the 6,000 years right here. That's where Asu was created. What did it say? Book of Jehovah, chapter 4, verse 16. In the next age I bring it into Simu, for it is right for the bringing forth of living creatures, and I bestow the vegetable and animal kingdom. Book of Jehovah, chapter 5, verse 14, 13, and 14. Jehovah heard the words of man, and he answered him, saying, let a sign be given to man so that he may comprehend Simu. And so Jehovah caused the jellyfish and green scum of water to be permanently coming forth in all ages, so that man could understand the age of Simu. They go to jellyfish. The jellyfish comes from this old age of the planet, the time of creation of Simu. And the green scum is a sign of these past ages. It states, look, when the earth and the shores by the water, and the waters also, were covered over with commingled atmosphere and corporeal substance. That's how that looked. The earth was looking like this at one point, covered over with commingled atmosphere and corporeal substance, right? And then look what it states. This substance was called Simu, because by its presence, Jehovah quickened it into life. And in that way, he made all the living, both vegetable and animal worlds. See that? Not that Simu was jellyfish or green scum of water, for in this day the earth does not produce Simu abundantly. Nevertheless, the jellyfish and the green scum of water are signs of that which was in the days of the earth, in that day of the earth. See that? Verse 13. Such is my person and my spirit, being from everlasting to everlasting. And when I bring a new world into the time of Simu, my presence quickened the substance into life. So when the earth was commingled over like this, is when the process of quickening to life began. Simu was like semen. It's like that generates life. And then it states, when I bring a new world into the time of Simu, my presence quickened the substance into life. And according to the locality and the surroundings, I bring forth different species, for they are flesh of my flesh and spirit of my spirit. To themselves I gave themselves, nevertheless they are all members of my person. A precept to that, Book of Jehovah, chapter 6, verse 11, out of Simu I made man. What is Simu? Commingled atmosphere and corporeal substance equals Simu. This is an example out of commingled atmosphere and corporeal substance. He said, out of Simu I made man. Book of Inspiration, chapter 6, verse 19, and thus made him out of the dissolved elements. The dissolved elements is the periodic table of elements. And likewise for the substance of the animal kingdom. Book of Jehovah, chapter 4, verse 15 through 17 again. Hold up. I think I went through that part. No, it ain't been out. So for an example, first as vapor, the vortex carry it forth, and it condenses, its friction engenders heat, and is becoming as a globe of fire in heaven. Precept. As a testimony to man, behold, the earth was once a liquid globe of fire. I rained down Simu on the earth, quickened into life all the living without seed. I created the living that is in them. It's supposed to be in them right there. So here's an example. The earth was once a globe of fire. So here's the earth as a globe of fire. In due season, I rained down Simu on the earth. And now, by virtue of my presence, I quicken into life all the living. So it's just giving you an example of the process and stages the earth goes through. Now, Jehovah saith, in the time of Simu, I brought forth the earth into Ajah, and darkness was upon the face of the earth for a space of 3,000 years. And yet for other 3,000 years, half darkness covered all the land and water. So when Asu was created, he was created within this time period, because that's 6,000 years, 3,000 years of darkness, and another 3,000 years of semi-darkness. And it is this time period that Asu was created. And this is an example of how the semi-darkness would have looked when Asu was created. Behold, O man, as I have given time, behold, O man, as I have given to females a time to bring forth their young, so give I to the earth a time for the conception of the living species on the land and in the water and in the air above. And I call the time the era of Simu. See that? The era of Simu again. Let's break this down. This is the time of creation. The last Gadol, the last 24,000 years, the sixth Gadol is when animal and man was created. We got the first half. Look what it states. Remember, last Gadol, 24,000 years. 24,000 years is broken down into two halves of 12,000 years. 12,000 years is broken down into four arc cycles of 3,000 years. So when we come to the second half of the 12,000 years, the last 6,000 years is right here. This is when Asu was created. When we move on, that's moving on to the time of inhabitation coming this way. But this is the last 6,000 years. And as the verse stated, Jehovah saith, in the time of Simu, I brought forth the earth into Ajah, and Jaya, and darkness was upon the face of the earth for the space of 3,000 years. So this is the first 3,000 years that darkness was upon the earth. But keep in mind, Asu was created at the beginning of this 3,000 years. And then for another 3,000 years, it states what? Jehovah saith, and yet for other 3,000 years, half darkness covered the land and water. So half darkness covered land and water for the next 3,000 years. So Asu lived 3,000 years in darkness and semi-darkness. And then when the Ark of Wan came, is when the atmosphere cleared up to how you see it today. So Oahspe is rendering up these mysteries. So here again, just another breakdown, saying the same thing. So this is the first 3,000 years when the earth is over here. The second 3,000 years when the earth is over here. And Asu is created within this time period. He's inhabiting the earth this time period, this last 6,000 years before moving to the time of inhabitation. So Oahspe Bible, Book of Cosmology and Prophecy, chapter 4, verse 18 and 19, it states, as previously stated, the vortexian currents are to the earth in the daylight and from the earth in the night, although their force is toward the center of the earth and toward the North Pole afterward. The following results happen. Take a pool of water, for example. It is charged during the day with positive current, but during the night, the negative current escapes upward from the water. You notice you see water sometimes like in the morning, you see that cloud, that vapor rising off of water. That's due to the light of the sun or vortexia during the daytime penetrating the water. And then night, it escapes back into the atmosphere. And that's why you see that haze and that cloud, that fog above water. But during the night, the negative currents escape upward from the water. The resulting decomposition is called Simu. What's that? Mucilaginous substance that floats on the surface of the water. What is I'll be having trouble pronouncing that. Mucilaginous substance. What is it? Let's click on it and see. Let's click on it and see what's up. All right. So what is this substance called melikich? It is what? Having a viscous or gelatin consistency. And this is what it looks like. Mucilage is a thick, gluey substance produced by nearly all plants and some microorganisms. Right? So look what it states here. Mucilage is a thick, gluey substance produced by nearly all plants and some microorganisms. These microorganisms include protosis, however you pronounce that, which use it for their locomotion. The direction of their movement is always opposite to that of the secretion of mucilage. It is a it's a polyglucoprotein. It's a polyglucoprotein. What's a polyglucoprotein? A glucoprotein are proteins. Click proteins. Proteins. What proteins got to do with? DNA replication. So technically, mucilage, however you pronounce it, deals with DNA replication on a protein level. When we come back, so mucilage contains DNA replication. So coming back here, it said it's a viscous substance. This is what a viscous substance is, a thick substance. They describe what Simu is like, the substance of Simu. It says, in a few days, this Simu, by motion, assumes certain defined shapes, crystals, fibers, and otherwise, like the strange configurations of frost on a window pane. A few days after this, if the Simu green scum is examined with the magnifying lens, it will be discovered that here are miniature trees, even forests with vines and grasses. No seed was there. See that? Another thing with mucilage is that it generates seeds within. It replicates DNA and it generates seed. So this is an example. This is the green scum again. This is what it states when you look at a microscope. It says there's many trees and even forests. This is an example of that. So they're showing you how vegetation is produced through this process of myceligenous, however you pronounce it. I gotta Google that word and see how it's pronounced. Matter of fact, can I do that? Let me see if I can put how to pronounce that word real quick. See, hold up. Mucilaginous. Okay, that's how you pronounce it. Mucilaginous. So now, mucilaginous, let's go back up. Mucilaginous substance, that's what it's called, mucilaginous substance. So mucilaginous substance contains seed germination and DNA replication within the protein. I forgot how to pronounce it that quick. Look, all right, hold up. How you pronounce that shit again? Mucilaginous. All right, mucilaginous. All right. So look, what is the function of mucilagin? Look what it states. Mucilaginous in plants play a role in storage of water, food, and what? Seed germination. And it also contains DNA replica. So seed germination, hold up. So we got seed germination. And then when we go to the definition, you see it here, seed germination again. But then it's a polyglycoprotein. When you press glycoprotein, it's a protein, and this protein deals with what? DNA replication. So not only it's generating seed. Hold on. Right here. Seed germination. And then it's DNA replication. All this is going on within, however you pronounce that shit again. I don't forgot. I don't forgot how to pronounce that word again. So within this, and keep in mind, this is the essence of Simu. This is what Simu contains. Because we're coming back up here. It says the resulting decomposition is called Simu. A what? Mesogenous substance. So Simu is a mesogenous substance, and a mesogenous substance is a seed germinator and also a DNA replica. So there you have it. When it states right here in this verse, he states what? No seed was there. It ain't take a seed to do this. The seed is being generated and germinated through the mesogenous. So look, in a few days, Simu, by motion, assumes certain defined shapes, crystals, and fibroids, and otherwise like strange configurations of frost on a window pane. A few days after this, if the Simu green scum is examined with a magnifying lens, it will be discovered that here are miniature trees, even forests with vines, grasses, and look, no seed was there. It ain't take no seed to produce these things. These things were produced through a substance called mesogenous. And mesogenous is responsible for what? Seed germination. So it ain't need a seed to produce this, but this mesogenous substance is a seed germinator. It produced seed. And not only that, it's a protein, so it produced and duplicate DNA. And this is the substance Simu, which man is created from. It's interesting. It's interesting. All right, let's move on. And then it states here, this new property is called life. And because it exists everywhere, it is called omnipresent. Man can account for the Simu, for the positive and negative forces for copper and for ether. But life is unfathomable by man. If the Simu floats against the ground, its infinitesimal trees, vines, and grass take root and grow and live for a season and die. But from their roots and seeds, because remember, they're seed germinators, they germinate and produce seed, a larger growth succeeds. In that way, the whole world becomes inhabited with living creatures. Nevertheless, not one of them merge into another, but everyone bring forth after its own kind. So now we got to examine the animal kingdom. Bears don't come from lions, and lions don't come from elephants. Every animal was generated after its own kind. But it seems like in the human genome, we all come from one common ancestor, but those rules essentially don't apply in the animal kingdom because the animals was created in pairs. It's not like you have one lion, and then from this one lion, the lion Adam and the lion Eve, and then from these two Adam and Eve lions produce all the other lions. Jehovah say he created the animal kingdoms in thousands, in pairs of thousands and hundreds of thousands. So I believe that humans was created in that same manner, in pairs. Instead of saying one man and from one man, the rest of humanity spawned from one man. That's that Bible shit. That's that Adam and Eve. Even in the theology, even in the genome world, they still follow that. The Y chromosome Adam. They still dealing with that biblical concept. So this is the Simuan ferment. The Simuan ferment, again, we all dealing with this. All this is taking place in the first age, the time of creation, and within the 24,000 year period, the sixth Gadol, where he created the living thereon in one Gadol. So all this we break down is this last 24,000 year period in the inhabitable age. Jehovah said, behold, I call the living creatures to gestate in darkness, and this shall be the testimony to the end of the world, that when I created life on the earth, she traveled in my Simuan ferment. right here. When he created life on the earth was in darkness, in semi-darkness. At the end of the Simu age, that is the time of the termination of creating animal life. Look at that. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to that. The time of the termination of creating animal life. What comes after animal? What comes after creation? Cohabitation. Cohabitation is extending the life of the species, continuing the lineage of the species. But the species had to be created before you could co-inhabitate. So that's the beautiful thing about the Oahspe. It tells you that there was a time of creation and there was a termination for the time of creation of animal life. And then from that point on, male and female animals had to coincide and mingle to continue the species. Again, at the end of the Simu age, that is the time of the termination of creating animal life, Jehovah said, behold, I quicken the earth with living creatures. By my breath came forth all the living on the face of the earth, and in the waters thereof, and in the air above the earth. And I took the earth out of darkness, out of the dark regions, and I brought her into the light of my Etherian worlds. Now let's stop right there. When he said he brought her out into the dark region, now keep in mind the dark regions are this right here. These are the dark regions. You remember what he states. Jehovah said, in the time of Simu, I brought forth the earth into Jaya and to Ajah and Jaya, and darkness was upon the face of the earth for what? A space of 3,000 years. And look what it states here. And yet for another 3,000 years, half darkness covered land and water. So this is the 6,000 year period that man was in darkness and semi-darkness on the earth. And then after that darkness came the light of the Ark of Wand. He said, what? Look. And I took the earth out of the dark regions, meaning that after this 6,000 years, when the earth got right here, is when the Ark of Wand came, was when the earth entered to the arc cycle of Wand, the Etherian light. And guess what, nigga? Shit got lit. Shit got lit. What it say? I took the earth out of the dark regions. And it was in the dark regions for 6,000 years, and brought her into the light of my Etherian world. What Etherian world? The Ark of Wand. That's the time of Sentantes. And I commanded the living to bring forth by what? Cohabitation. This is what the Kemetic niggas be screaming. When you talk about who created you? Oh, I was created by my mother and father. Nigga, you talking about cohabitation. Niggas don't even understand creation. They don't get it. Cohabitation. They think niggas evolved from a eukaryotic cell. No, nigga. You was created a man, just like a goddamn animal, a monkey, and a lion. Them niggas was created and fashioned, and then cohabitation came after after creation. So it was creation and then cohabitation. And I commanded the living to bring forth by cohabitation every species after its own kind. And man was more what? Dumb, meaning without speech, lack of intelligence, and helpless than any other living creature, coming back to the growth of the mortal through the ages. Just like a baby coming into the world, it comes into the world ignorant, lack of knowledge. It has to be taught language. And through language, you learn comprehension and understanding. A baby comes into the world crawling. Nigga, you got to learn how to walk. When you was a child, nigga, you had to learn how to walk. You ain't coming to the world like this kid right here, just walking out the womb. So Creator is showing you through the growth, through the process of aging from a child to an adult, that man went through these same conditions in its earliest stages of creation. When man came into the world just like this, crawling on his belly, crawling on all fours, just like this baby. And then man walked upright. What did Jehovah say? I brought my angels to raise man up. Meaning, nigga, walk upright to your capabilities. You a man, nigga. You ain't no animal. Let me show you. So again, Jehovah spoke unto the angels that dwelt in his Etherian worlds, saying, behold, I have created a new world, like unto places where ye were quickened into life. Come ye and enjoy it, and raise man upright, and give him words of speech. See that? For these will also be angels in time to come. See that? The Creator set the angels as like parents. Teach these niggas. Give them words of speech so they can comprehend. Make them walk upright and not like the animals. Raise them up to the capabilities that I create them for. And that was the lesson for the angels. It's like being parents. They was playing parents to the primitive man, hominid man. Precept. God's book of Esther, chapter 4, verse 15. Verse 15. These are from Jehovah and in him. And all angels, gods, lords, generals, captains, chiefs in heaven are only the brothers and sisters of both mortals and the spirits of the dead. So these angels that we talking about ain't nothing but one-time human beings that's coming back to lift man up. So let's not get spooky when we talk about angels, because right here it just cleared up that all angels, gods, lords, generals, captains in heaven are chiefly the brothers and sisters of both mortals and the spirits of the dead. That makes plenty sense to me. If you want to know what grandma and grandpa are doing after they die, well, now you know. They moving up in rank in the spiritual realm. They may not be gods and lords yet, but they showing you that you could achieve these titles as you advance in the spiritual world. It may take you 800 years, 9,000, 2,000 years to become a god, but that employment is open for you to receive. Finding the inhabitable time for mortals on the earth. Now again, this is the two ages. This is the age of Simu. This is the inhabitable age. This is the first age. This is the second age. This is the inhabitable age. This is where we're at right now. So let's break this down. In the first age, it states, look, 102 inflammation at death. This is unsuitable to support life. Man. But when we come to the second age, place the Simuan age at 99 degrees Fahrenheit scale, the time of quickening animal life. So animal was quickened within the borderline of the inhabitable age and the time of creation. Right here is when the animals was created. And then it states, look, for man, to find the Simuan age of man, place his temperature at 98 degrees for optimum health, good health. So this is good health for man on a planetary scale. Look what it states here, 4 below normal. This is 94 get all degrees. What's going to happen here? 4 below normal, therefore, 4 below normal will therefore be the end of the period of man's inhabitation on the earth. So it's letting you know that the inhabitation of man in the inhabitable age is from 98 to 94 get all degrees. That's within the second half of the inhabitable age. Finding the inhabitable time for mortals on earth. So now, that was just a scale showing you. They go to chapter and verses showing you. Book of Cosmology and Prophecy, chapter 5, verse 17. Place the Simuan age at 99 degrees, the time of quickening animal life. There you go right there. Place the Simuan age at 99 degrees, the time of quickening animal life. Let's click this reference. What that say? Some people and some pets maintain a baseline temperature a little or below the average. But if your pet temperature rises above 104 or falls below 99, take your pet to a veterinarian. So they let you know the regions, the body temperature that's suitable for animals. So 99 get all degree, 99 body temperature wise. It states, to find the Simuan age of man, place his temperature at 98 for optimum health. We got 98 right here on the map. The second get all degree. It says to find the Simuan age of man, place his temperature at 98, optimum health. Click the reference. Body temperature for man. What is a normal body temperature? Right here. 98.6. Says set the standard at 98.6. For a typical adult, body temperature can be anywhere from 97 to 99. See that? Babies and children have a little higher range of 97 to 100. See that? What do you say? To find the Simuan age, place his temperature at 98 for optimum health. So even Oahspe goes into the body temperature for our existence. It states, and 102 for inflammation and death. Inflammation. If your body temperature reach above 102, nigga, you out of here. What'd that say? A fever is a higher than normal body temperature, one of the body's natural response to infection. A low-grade fever isn't usually a cause of concern, but a temperature of 102 and above should be treated. Above what? 102, a temperature above 102. What it stayed up here? 102 is inflammation and death. See that? Your body temperature got to do with your existence. 4 below normal will therefore be the end of the period of man's inhabitation on the planet. So this is 4 below normal. When the Earth reached 94 Ghetto degrees, 4 below normal will therefore be the end of the period of man's inhabitation on the Earth. So it's showing you that man has a creation and an extinction to his existence. After the vortexian radiation reached this period, 94 degrees, man will cease to propagate and so become extinct as to the Earth. See that? See that? So this takes place within this half period, the second age, the inhabitable age, 144,000 year period. Archeology. Now we're moving to the archaeology. Showing you, we deal with archaeology. We just gave you the cosmogony, gave you creation of animals, planetary temperature and all that, vortexian temperature. Now we can deal with archaeology. Now in the synopsis of 16 cycles, chapter 1, verse 15, it states, at the time of man's creation, the earth was traveling in the Ark of Wan. This is the Ark of Wan right here. These are the 3,000 year periods called arc cycles. How do we know the earth is in a new age called Cosmon? In the Oahspe Bible, chapter 1, verse 23 and 24, in the 33rd year thereof, 1881, the angels descended, the ambassadors of the angel hosts of heaven, in the name of Jehovah, revealed to man his heavenly kingdom through his Oahspe, making known the plan of his delightful creation for the resurrection of the people of the earth. Note, the Oahspe was revealed in 1881, 33 years after previously. Is 1848, the beginning of the Cosmon era. So 1848 is the beginning of the next 3,000 year period. First half of the inhabitable age on earth. 144,000 years equal the inhabitable time of worlds on the earth, as you see there. These are the arc cycles. From the first arc cycle to where we're at, we're in the 25th arc cycle, and it has the names of the arc cycles above. You see the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, so on, all the way to the 25th, where that's where we're at right now, the 25th arc cycle. And when we come to the bottom, you have the years, the creation of man, and the years that go with it. First era of civilization, 43,553 BC. You got the time of the flood, 22,553 BC. We got 1 AD right here. You got time of Zarathustra, time of Adamahim, time of Moshe, or the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. First century right here in 1848, right there. So we got the first half age mapped out right there. First era of civilization. Look, it states the first era of civilization is 45,553 BC, right? First era of civilization. Now, in a synopsis of 16 cycles, chapter 1, verse 18 to 21, it states, the 10th cycle was under Mislitivus, chieftainess of the archers of Los Gobak, in the Ark of Nu, and her harvest was 10,800,000,000. Now the earth was filled of people. All the continents and islands of the earth were inhabited by man, nor was there any wilderness left where man did not dwell. Now they're letting you know that when the earth reached the 10th arc cycle right here, this is the 10th arc cycle after the creation of man right here. Now you're talking 43, basically 43,000 BC, right? Which is roughly 45,000 years ago. You had the first era of civilization. And the Oahspe describes that during this first era of civilization, that the earth was full of people. This is the Diluvian time period that the Graham Hancocks, the Atlanteans, and all the people be talking about, the pre-flood civilization. This is what it's talking about. Oahspe gives you a time period when it happened 45,000 years ago or 43,000 BC. The earth was full of people. All the continents and islands of the earth were inhabited by man. So now, you're talking 45,000 years ago, it stated all the continents and islands were inhabited. So America was inhabited back then. Niggas is arguing about the people in the Americas in recent times. They're talking about 45,000 years ago, right here, during the first era of civilization. And here goes some monuments from that time period. The Venus of Holy Fels figurine, 40,000 to 35,000 years ago. That fits the time period of the first era of civilization. Let me bring this map up. See, 10th arc cycle right here. You come down the line, this is the Earth, and you see the time, first era of civilization, 43,553 BC. And it states that the whole planet was inhabited, because this was the first era of civilization. And then we got monuments and artifacts from that time period. There go one right there. It says, but the generation of man had fallen from 33 down to 12 years, and man and woman were at maturity at 7 years old. And not many lived above 30. Now look at that. Now, when you look at movies like Lords of the Rings, show these little hobbits, these niggas was grown-ass men, but they were looking like children. But nonetheless, and many of the men and women matured at 7 years old, and not many lived above 30 years. But they were prolific, many of the mothers bringing forth 2 sons and daughters, and from 2 to 4 babies at birth. And man dwelt in peace. The earth was filled, and it brought forth abundantly everything that was good for man to eat and to clothe himself with. In those days, there were great cities of hundreds of thousands of inhabitants, and thousands of such cities in all the 5 great divisions of the earth. And man built ships and sailed over the ocean in all directions around the whole world. You're talking 45,000 years ago. By the angels of the Lord, he was taught and guided in all things. And man had books, both written and printed. Look at that. And in schools, the young were taught knowledge regarding the sun, moon, and stars, and all things that are upon the earth and in its water. This was therefore called the first period of civilization on earth. Now that's interesting. It's basically describing how we live in today. They have all the modern things we got today. I don't know if they had driving vehicles, but as far as they got boats, they print, they writing books, they studying the sun, moon, and stars, they got schools. So this was the first era of civilization, the 10th era. And these are monuments from these time periods. See that? Look what it say, 40,000 years ago. And this was found in Israel. Two fossils of Homo sapiens date to 40,000 to 39,000 years. Let's look. See what they're talking about. Okay, these are fossils. He says, layer sequence at Qasr Akal in the Levant corridor, and discovered of 2 fossils of Homo sapiens dated to 40,000 to 39,000 BP for Elbert, and 42,400 to 41,700. So this is some Homo sapien bones or whatever, relics from the time period of the first era of civilization. It ain't gonna be much because a lot took place since that, but you still got remnants and evidence of these things. 45,000 years old. Look at that. This 45,500-year-old pig painting is the oldest animal art. Now keep in mind the state they was doing everything in the first era of civilization. They was writing, painting, printing. They were doing all that. Look what it says. This is a 500,000-year-old painting. See, look at that. So we're bringing up things from that time period. These are the artifacts from that time period. 40 plus thousand years ago. Some more. Look at this. One of the oldest known figurative paintings, a depiction of an unknown bovine was discovered in the Lube Jera Selah cave and dated to be more than 40,000, perhaps as old as 52,000 years ago. Look at that. See that? They're showing you the petroglyphs even before the time of Thor. The time of Thor is 18,000 years ago. This is 40,000 years ago. This will fit the time when the angels first gave them the Simu language in the first arc cycle. That would have been from that time period. Those scrolls, that language, the panic language. This is the panic language before Thor. For those who know what I'm talking about. So we're just pulling out the evidence of this time period because this is archaeologically. I can never pronounce that word. Archaeology. An artist's depiction of a group of rhinos was completed in the Chevet cave, but this is the time period, 30 to 32,000 years ago. So all this is just evidence from time periods that will coincide roughly with these time periods. 30,000-year-old cave hyena painted found in, this is in France. 30,000 years ago. Who painted that in France? Who was up there? They said the Grimaldi's left Africa 40,000 years ago and went into Europe. Showing you hardcore evidence of these things, yo. Europeans' prehistoric cave painting had roots in the Middle East, archaeologists say. See that? Here we got a depiction here. Okay. Just a European prehistoric cave painting had roots in the Middle East. So they're showing you the migration coming from the East to Europe. Now we're moving on to the flood in the Ark of Noah. Now, Book of Aph, son of Jehovah. In the time of the world, 24,000 years before the Cosmon era, the great serpent, being the solar system, being in the Ark of Noah in the Etherian firmament. This is the 17th arc cycle, right here. The 17th arc cycle. When you move down, this is the time of the flood, basically 24,000 years ago. This is from the present, right? So 24,000 years ago, the earth was in the Ark of Noah. No, the Ark of Noah was the name of an arc cycle, as you see here, the Ark of Noah. It was the 17th arc cycle, and during that time period is when the flood took place, or the sinking of the continent of Pan. That's what happened. So now, here's the math. Now, this is the creation of man. Do the math. Now, you got the creation of man, the first era of civilization, the time of the flood, and our present time. So from the creation of man to the flood is 16 arc cycles, giving us a total of 48,000 years. And from the flood to the 25th arc cycle is a period of 24,000 years, giving us a total of 72,000 years, which is half of the inhabitable age. See that? So we're just not speculating these numbers. We tied this shit into history right now. Time periods that is present. Look, Venus of Lassul, 25,000 years old. Now, this is the time period of the flood. Because remember, the flood is 25,000 years ago, right up here. This is when the flood took place. 24,000 years ago, 22,553 BC, 24,000 years ago. Now, what artifacts do we got from 24,000 years ago that coincide with the time period of the flood? And we come down here, what does it say here? The Venus of Lausel, 25,000-year-old in France. Look at that. This in France, fam. It's in France. Right? Look at that. This was found in France. It looked like she's holding a horn, like how them Israelites be blowing the horn. Niggas was blowing the horn 24,000 years ago. What you talking about? So, so they got proof of the artifacts going back to these time periods. The Venus of Brassul and Pool, how do you pronounce that? 25,000 years ago, again in France. They go to references, the sources, the artifacts. the sinking of the continent of Pan, and the ring of fire. Now here's an image in the Oahspe that they just drew up of the continent of Pan, which would have been in the Pacific. See that? So the Pacific Ocean, it was a continent there. You see what I'm saying? Hold on for a minute. All right, so now this is where the continent of Pan sank, right, in the Pacific. The ring of fire after the continent of Pan sank. So this is the ring of fire. This is actual facts, the ring of fire. Now, nobody can tell you how this ring of fire is produced or why these regions are unstable the way it is. But we have the answer to that. Look at this. Synopsis of 16 cycles. This is in the book of Oahspe Bible. Synopsis of 16 cycles, chapter 3, verse 16 through 18, the states, verse 16. And now the council deliberated. Now keep in mind, this is 45,000 years ago what we're reading, this the time period. So we're just not speculating the time period. We're putting this in context. And now the council deliberated, and after a while caused the records of the earth and her atmosphere to be examined. And they discovered that the heavens of the land of Pan, Waga, was beyond redemption, because of the great number of the spirits of the cannibals and the multitudes of fetals. The condition of Pan and her heavens was as if a disease in the flesh healed over externally, leaving the root of the disease within. Accordingly, the redemption of the cycles did not remain with her, but evil broke out continually in a new way. So check this. So Jehovah said, now will I prune the earth and her heavens. Behold, the division of Pan shall be hewed off and cast beneath the waters of the ocean. Her heavens shall no longer be tenable by the spirits of destruction, for I will render its foundation and scatter them in the winds of heaven. Go therefore down to the earth and provide nets and benches for receiving the spirits of darkness and for receiving the spirits of mortals who shall perish in the waters. Also provide a place in my exalted heaven suitable for them. And you shall put walls around them in heaven so they can not escape, but can be weaned from evil. See that? So Creator ain't doing this without a purpose and a cause. And Creator could, he's the life giver and the life taker. Only Creator could do that. But he has a decree or reason why he's doing what he's doing, to wean these niggas from evil. Right? So here's the ring of fire, the cause of the ring of fire. It was due to the sinking of the continent of Pan. See that? This shit kind of look like Africa a little bit. If you look at the grid lines, the grid line look like Africa right here. Like a big ass Africa that would have been sitting in the Pacific. So now look, Book of Ape, son of Jehovah, chapter 6, verse 4 through 9. It's discussing the sinking. And the end of the Etherian column that extended down to the earth was made secure around the borders of Pan, by the sea and by the high mountains to the north. This is an example of what they're talking about. What we're reading is that during the sinking of the continent of Pan, they used advanced technology to sink the continent. So now, it's what? And I divided the lines into sections, each with 250 ships, and there were 1,000 sections, and every ship was contracted 10,000-fold, which was the force required to break the crust of the earth and sink a continent. So look what it's stating. Pay attention. It states what? It was 250 ships, and there were 1,000 sections. So that's 250,000 ships. That's in the surrounding this continent. 250,000 ships in columns of 1,000 surrounding this continent. And then it lets you know the force required. Look what it states. Pay attention. And every ship, which is 250,000, so you have 250,000 ships, which contracted 10,000-fold, which was the force required to break the crust of the earth and sink a continent. So there you have it. It's letting you know. It says 10,000-fold, which was the force required to break the crust of the earth. Now, this is why you got the ring of fire. Because these niggas cracked the goddamn earth using their technology, and it created instability in these regions. This is where they hedged around to sink the motherfucker, to crack it, to penetrate the force, to sink the continent beneath the water. This shit is bugged out. 10,000-fold, which was the force required to break the crust of the earth and sink a continent. See that? That's where you got your ring of fire from. The instability of that. Book of 8th, Son of Jehovah, chapter 6, verse 5 through 9. Again I said, O Jehovah, deliver the earth from evil, for your glory forever. And the vortex of the earth. Remember, we was talking about the vortex earlier. See that? It's coming right back around to vortexia. You can't do shit. No manipulating to the earth without vortexia. Because the vortex surrounds the earth. And the vortex of the earth closed in from the rim. And lo, the earth was broken. A mighty continent was cut loose from its fastening. And the fire of the earth came forth in flames and clouds with loud roaring, and the land rocked to and fro like a ship. Now look at that. What is this shit called? The ring of fire. What came forth from the earth? Fires of the earth came forth in flames. What is this called? The ring of fire. What did the Oahspe say? The fires of the earth came forth in flames and clouds. See that? The Oahspe is letting you know that this ring of fire is caused by the sinking of the continent of Pan. And we still see the instability till this day. And then it states here, verse 7. And again I said, O Jehovah, deliver your heavens, which are bound like a chain to a rotten carcass. And again, the vortex of the earth closed in on all sides, and by the pressure, the land sank beneath the water to rise no more. And the Comporians went down to death, and the Fetals and Familiars gave up the battle. Neither did they have anywhere to stand, nor did they know how to go to any place in all the heavens, but were lost and crying out for help. See that? That must have been a crazy, devastating ass day right there. And my hosts hastened in all directions with their birth blankets and received the drudges, the Fetals, the Essaens, and the millions and millions gathered and delivered them to the fountain of light, where I had previously atmosphere for them, and they were placed within. So great were the numbers that even the gods had scarcely seen anything like it before. Even them niggas were shocked, like, God damn. And in order to attest before you, O Jehovah, I had them numbered using the sections of the divisions of my gods and goddesses in order to do so. So that's showing you and giving you the reason of the sinking of the continent of Pan, and the reason why they call the ring of fire is because the compression and the concentration of cracking the continent and sinking it beneath the water. And the results from that 25,000 years ago till this day, we know it as the ring of fire or unstable grounds in the Pacific. So now we're going to move on to the petroglyphic system. 15,000 to 12,000 years ago, what are petroglyphs? And we're moving into the cycle of Thor. What are petroglyphs? This is the time period right here. We're moving down the arc cycle, 13,000 years ago. So we went from the creation of man to the first era of civilization, to the time of the flood. Now we're moving on down to Thor. You know, oh, Thor, the Greek god. Nah, nigga. You see the time period? This is 1353 BC. This is 15,000 years ago we talking. And then I give another example. The Thor, son of Jehovah, 13,000 BC. The Norris Thor that you're familiar with, 800 AD. So it's not the same Thor. Oahspe revealed things that we know not of. We just got to learn what the fuck is talking about to get the bigger picture. Now, this is the cycle of Thor, and this is what man was taught during the cycle of Thor. The Lord's fourth book, chapter 1, verse 1 through 7, it states, God foresaw that the knowledge of one generation could be handed down to the next by altars and temples, by idols and images, and by painted signs and graven words. And through all these things are in fact false, as a written word is not a word, but an image of an idea that has been spoken. So by symbols, God conveyed the living truth. See that? See that? What we getting at? Who we talking about here? Let's get it. God commanded man to make stone and wooden images and engravings also of everything upon the earth. And so man made them according to his own knowledge, he made them. God said, as every living creature has a name, so shall its image and its engraving have the same name. And so shall it be with all things on the earth, and in its water, and in the air above the earth. The image and the engraving shall have the same names as the real things themselves. See that? Look what's being conveyed here. God sent his angels down to man to inspire him in the workmanship of images and engravings, and man thus accomplished the commandments of God. See what's going on? This is what's going on in the cycle. This is the cycle of thought 15,000 years ago. And these were the first writing systems since the flood. See that? And these were the first writings since the flood, other than those that were kept sacred among the Ions. And the writings were in the following manner, namely. Now they're going to tell you how the system works. A picture of a man was a man. A picture of a tree was a tree. A picture of a bird was a bird, and so on. Everything represented by its own name and image. Now, here goes a source. These are, like I said, these are petroglyphs. So the first writing system after the flood, as it states here, these were the first writings after the flood, and we're talking about a time period of 15,000 years ago. So here's a source. It states ancient North Americans gouged elaborated rock art into a heap of big boulders northeast of Reno, Nevada, more than 10,000 years ago, perhaps 15,000 years ago. That makes the carving the oldest known petroglyph on the continent, according to a paper published in the Journal of Archeology Science. And this is a picture of the petroglyph, and this is in America. They date this back 10 to 15,000 years ago. See that? There goes the source. It's labeled what? North America's oldest known petroglyph discovered in Nevada. And they go a picture of the petroglyph again. This fits the same time period that we read it from, 15,000 years ago. And this is what I just read right there. So now that's one source. 12,000-year-old rock painting found in Colombia. This is still the same time period, dealing with the petroglyphic system. Tens of thousands of 12,000-year-old rock painting found in Colombia. Look at this. Boom. This fits the same time period that we're talking about. That the Oahspe reveals that man created a writing system based off of petroglyphic images. See that? Let's keep it moving. 15,000-year-old Gobi Desert petroglyph. I said desert. So look at this. 15,000-year-old Gobi Desert petroglyph made by ancient Turks. 15,000 years ago. They're giving you this reference. I don't know if they got a picture of it, but they go to article. I'm just showing you the time periods of these petroglyphs that coincide with the time periods that the Oahspe say these things occurred. How petroglyphs are used. Now it breaks down how these petroglyphs are used. Right here. The Lord's fourth book, chapter 1, verse 8 through 11. Verse 8. Then God said, when you have made the picture of a spear, behold, it is a spear. And when you desire to show which way a man goes, you shall add to the graven image the likeness of a spear, and the way it points shall show the way man goes. And you shall express the going of everything on earth and in heaven in the same way, with the spear showing its direction. You see that? Now let's give it an example. What do you see here? A petroglyph of a carving of bighorn sheep near Moab, Utah. So now if I was a gather hunter and I wanted to know where sheep was at, if I came to this wall, all the direction of the sheep are pointing this way. So I would know as a gather hunter to go this way in order to look for sheep. That's how you read the petroglyphic system. as is stated up here again. When you had made the picture of a, let's use a sheep. Since it's a sheep right here, let's use a sheep for an example. I'm going to use spare. Oh, no, I'm going to use sheep there. No, I'm going to read it for what it is. And when you have made the picture of a spear, behold, it is a spear. And when you desire to show which way, let's say, which way the sheeps go, you shall add to the graven image in likeness of a spear, and the way it points shall show the way the sheeps go. And you shall express the going forth of everything on earth and in the heavens in the same way, with the spear showing its direction. So now, these are sheeps, and they're all pointed in this direction. So as the gather hunter, I'll know that sheeps are in this direction. So the more I go this way, I'm going to eventually see a colony of sheeps. And it'll be the same thing. If these were birds, and all of these were birds, and there was birds pointed in this direction, I will know that, okay, down this way is where a colony of birds may gather during some time or whatever. So again, here go another example. Now keep in mind, this is in Utah. This is in Namibia, Africa. But notice, look at the direction of the animals. Every single animal is going in the direction pointing this way. Not one animal is the opposite way. You got the giraffe, he's looking this way. The horse, this way. Whatever this is, the bull this way. The bull, all the animals are looking this way. So again, if I was a gather hunter and I wanted to look for animals for meat, when I come to this rock, understanding the petroglyphic system, I would know to go this way in order to hunt, because whoever produced this art allowed me to know that food is this way as a hunter-gatherer. Now, keep in mind, this is a writing system. This is a language we're talking about. This language predates Hebrew. This language predates Kemet. You see what I'm saying? This is the oldest written system on the planet, the petroglyphic system. Again, it states what? Look what it states here. Oahspe ain't no joke. Look what it states here. God said, this shall be called the what? Panic language. Asioga, earth language, because it is made of earthly images. And in later times, whoever desires to find the first written words of man shall have recourse to the pictures of all things on earth, in the waters, and in the air above. And here's an example of what we're talking about. It said this is the oldest system on the planet. This is older than your hieroglyphs. Your hieroglyphic system is only, what, 6,000 years old? You know? It started with Kemetic niggas in Egypt. Nigga, we talking 15,000, 12,000 years ago. Long before that. This is even before the Nakata periods, first and second and third, long before that. So again, God said, as in the ancient times, man named all things according to their own spoken words and sounds uttered. So in the days of Thor, the written words of everything on earth and in heaven came to the Gons, the copper color race. Who are the Gons? Now when these hairs grew to be men and women, behold, they had the gift of prophecy, of seeing visions, of hearing the voice of the angels of heaven. And they were called Ongui Gan, signifying good-shaped men. The Ongui came suddenly into the world. By the thousands of thousands they came in, the north, south, east, west, and they had long hair, black and coarse, but their skin was brown and copper color, and their arms were short, like the irons. Very proud were the Ongui. They were not mixed with the Ahuans. They would not mix with the Ahuans. And they dare not mix with the sacred little people because of the commandments of the Lord. And that's the end of that. You know what I mean? Give me a 1 in the chat if you're getting this understanding. We just broke down basically the cosmology data. We broke down creation, the time of creation, when man was created, when animal was created, the suitability of man to be able to be created on the planet. We touched on that. Went through the arc cycle, showed you archaeology through the arc cycle and things of that nature. So, as a whole, the Oahspe is a book of information. It's a book of information to investigate. You feel me, family? It's the vibes. Genius. See, that's Simu right there. You got the genetic code. It's a C generator. Makes sense. Peace to the God. Peace to the God. Salute. Salute to the family, yes. Let's continue to run the rhythm. Prince, I see you. What's good, fam? Matter of fact, make sure to get your bitters. Bam! Let's get it.
Bittersweet Herbals, where the taste is bitter, but the results are sweet. Bittersweetherbals.com.
Make sure to get your bitters. You know how we do. That's right. The angels acted as helpmates for primitive mortals. Exactly. The same way we are helpmates to our children, our infant, our babies, likewise in return with the first race of man. That's a good question. That's a good question. We can literally say that because if Jupiter could be in the cooling down phase from being a ball of fire going into the created state, or it can be coming from the fourth age going back into the first age. That's a good question. It's a blood clot vibes. Yes, fire upon more fire upon more fire. Fire for rain, yes. Hit me on the gram, Kings, and inbox me. The pictures that I got, I create the pictures. I get it to you. It ain't nothing. Just let me know. I'll get it to you. I got a photo with all the pictures and illustrations. I just send that shit over. Peace to all the gods and goddesses. It survived. Good question. Good question. Just in reference in modern terms, just to identify where the land, where they found the petroglyphs in that region. It's the blood clot vibes. Yes, fam, let me see the ones that chime in. With this vibe out now. I had to give that presentation again because the first one my mic was off, so I had to come back. That shit was haunting my mind. Yo, I'm like, I gotta redo that. I can't let that shit just be out there like that. So now it's redone. Man, if I can move forward. Man, I can move forward, yes. Is it some blood clot vibes? If you got any questions in the chat, you can throw them in there for a hot few. Vibing out now at the recreational phase where the atmospherians and the etherians intermingle and converse about creator's creation. That's what we just conversed about, creator's creation. If you noticed, the creator is orderly. One central system of creation, and as we showed and displayed and used examples, objective examples of that. The Oahspe creation makes the Bible creation a watered down version. Yeah, because the false god Enuhasas, who created the biblical creation tale, he watered it down purposely so mortals won't know the truth of creation. He intentionally gave us a 7-day creation story. That's why the Oahspe is so dope, because it shows you the essence of creation, and then it shows you the false god who gave us the 7-day creation story. So you have both hands to play with. If you don't believe in the creator's creation, you can still follow that 7-day creation, but the option is there for you to examine both sides. So you got the essence of creation, then you got the 7-day creation created by a false god. The Oahspe reveals that, so that's the dope shit about it. It exposes all. You dig? Run with them. This family, the false god Oahspe. This who gave us that false account of creation. You dig? Go back and analyze this video with the understanding of creation demonstrated with illustrations, graphs. So what I just showed you was just the surface of how deep the Oahspe can get. Start to analyze the pages in this book. If there's no more questions, family, I'm gonna go ahead and ride out. Your boy Selah, Shalom, gonna go ahead and ride out. I just want to come back and revise this video. We got it done. So we're gonna move forward. We're gonna move forward until next time. Until next time, the boy Selah Shalom is up and out. It's a vibes.